Amelie. I am your host and host and owner of Celestic Intelligence. You are watching the Digital Age series that I have as just my passion project to start looking into the digital age from the internet to where we are now. And I listened to this podcast, and a gentleman, I'll just leave it really vague and maybe I'll include it after. And I know I'm going a little early today, but it's going to be like that today. But so I was listening to this podcast today, and it was on AI, transhumanism. It's like a big topic right now. So it's very interesting to see others' views. Like, I don't want to put myself in an echo chamber, and I want to hear the arguments from others. And I also want to hear coherence in their arguments. One route that I found that I established deeply into the foundation of my work is that I do not lead you with despair. And if there's any moment that I do, I hope that somebody would correct me, because I am, after all, human and I do make mistakes. But for the most part, I am looking at this from a very positive lens, only because I understand the human ability to transcend, to find novelty, to be creative and innovative, and in general be useful. Like, we have this unique function, the sacred technology within ourselves, okay? So I want to kind of preface it with that, because when I was listening to this argument, and maybe there's others that might have better better viewpoints or better arguments from their area. But when I am looking at transhumanism, Warrior Buff, thank you for joining. Hello, welcome. So today we're going to be talking about transhumanism. And when I was listening to the arguments, there was a lot of despair that went into the message from the guy until the end. It was like the last maybe 5 minutes, and he was like, "Oh, we need to be a little independent and maybe plant something." And I'm like, "Yeah, but the whole argument that you've had was basically, we're doomed, like humanity is doomed, is like kind of woven into his message." And then there was even more parts of it where it sounded like he wasn't really sure. He was just kind of fluffing in these areas. And I get it, like, you're not going to know everything, but if you're going to be a voice and a leading voice, and to be telling people, like, it's very important that you understand and have a really solid message of, like, the base. Hi, Andre. Welcome from Brazil. That's amazing. Thank you for joining my broadcast today. So, I know how I am coming into this discussion and how important the discussion is. And it's not that I'm trying to find, like, to pick a side, because I'm not going to pick a side. That is not me. I look at everything from this kind of outward perspective of a collective as humanity. What is the best way that I could represent humanity's voice? And it's just, that's my energy. And so when I'm looking at how are we going to integrate the digital technology, AI, all of these technological advancements, how are we going to do that by really indicating to the humanity that wants to be awakened? Like, you can't force people to wake up. There is a universal law of consent. And so, even before these things are rolled out, they do let you know that they are rolling them out. And what I mean by rolling out and they is that anybody who is pro transhumanist that is looking to promote transhumanism into the world and like continuously bombard everybody until they accept it, that that is kind of a form of consent. So if you're going to agree to allowing these things in your life, do my message is do so with consciousness. Do so that you know what you're bringing into your life, so that when the things happen, it's not vampirically sucking your energy from you. You're doing it with sound mind and not under duress and not under coercion, but you're doing it with your own consciousness at the helm, like controlling your ship. Because we've got these beautiful bodies, you guys. Okay, so let's get into the topic of transhumanism. Just pull up my notes here. So I went to Wikipedia, funny enough, and I was like, okay, transhumanism. Let's just give me the brief rundown, nitty gritty. So, transhumanism is a philosophical and intellectual movement that advocates for the enhancement of the human condition. So, it's looking at our human body and it's saying it's not good enough. We need technologies to integrate the into to aid the human perspective, to aid in longevity of life. So the things that they are looking at, so we'll get into some of the stories, but so biologist Julian Huxley, you guys may or may not know him, popularized the term transhumanism in a 1957 essay. So that's where like kind of this buzzword came on the scene. But there are lots of history that is intertwined into this. So when we're looking at some of, I kind of looked at, okay, who are the big people? So many of you may have heard Ray Kurzweil. Ray Kurzweil, and that's Kurzweil. Hola, hi Starbright. Mike, welcome. Many of you may have heard of Ray Kurzweil. This is a person who wrote a book in 2005 called The Singularity is Near. And so this guy that was talking on the podcast was, mentioning Ray Kurzweil. And funny enough, I was looking at this case study today because I'm in school, and so I'm reading lots of case studies on personalities and just other things. I have all this access to any case study you can imagine, so I'm just like gobbling it up. And so I'm reading about adolescents going into high school. And the adolescents, there's a couple different theories that they're looking at as you're developing your social personality. So there's a couple theories. One is the entity theory, and the other one is incremental theory. So the entity theory is this fixed view of your perspective and your personality, meaning that if somebody is bullying you, there's nothing you could do, and it's just going to continue on, and there's no way to resolve it. And then the incremental theory is somebody is more of a malleable. Like if you're introduced with some other things that can help manipulate your personality into doing something that might be, like if you're getting bullied, maybe looking at that bully with compassion, or looking at what are the motivations of that person and their effect on you, and maybe even standing up for yourself and saying, you know, when you say this, it's not true, and and I'd appreciate it if you stopped. You know, somebody that is able to have resilience in that situation, knowing that the bully is likely doing so from a place of pain or hurt, and that that incremental theory of personality is a proven theory. Okay, so the studies that they did is they took, you know, their participants, which were eighth graders, ninth graders, so freshmen in high school, and they, you know, they looked at, they had control groups and they had their experimental group to see, you know, the control group, they have this fixed entity theory personality, and then our experimental group has the incremental theory, and we're gonna, you know, tell them, you know, that they can, you know, whatever motivations that they did, you can look at those. So one of them was done in 2007 by Blackwell, and then the other one was done in 2014 by Yeager. Is it 2014? I think it was 2014. And so it's basically your personality and the way that there's a reason why I'm talking about this. The way that you see the world, if you're stuck in an entity theory mindset, meaning that it's fixed and that nothing can be done, there's no intervention of anybody coming in and telling you that you can overcome the situation, and or give a little bit more detail to the situation, your your mindset is just going to carry on. So if that was something that you learned in adolescence, there was no interference, and you're going through your life and adulthood, that when you hear things, you're already in this victim mindset, is what I could tell. So that entity theory would be like a victim mindset. It would be somebody that's just a victim of the circumstances in their life. They can't do anything to change it. And so their self-assessment is negative. Their emotional regulation is low. They're just focused on using coping mechanisms. And just because you have a coping mechanism does not mean that you can't be subject and affected by the incremental theory. But if you're stuck in this entity theory that nothing will change for you, nothing will change. So as I'm looking at the whole transhumanism and AI and digital effects that it's having on our biological systems, mainly our cognitive systems, I am also kind of finding a little bit of brilliance in that, in the incremental theory. If somebody comes in and says it doesn't have to be that way, there's many different options. We can break the system that is continuing on. We can change that fixed mindset, that fixed personality, the victim mindset. We can change it. Then these studies, these theories are kind of beautifully woven into what I'm doing here, as far as investigating the digital age, investigating what's going on. So as I'm like reading about this and I'm thinking about my podcast that I'm watching and the mindset that the guy has, I can't help but be just kind of lifted up in the fact that we can change the future just with our own mindsets, right? Okay. And so that's what makes this work that I'm doing really kind of valuable and beautiful and important. All right. So we talked about what transhumanism is. and we're going to get into Ray Kurzweil. So most of the transhumanism, they're looking at philosophical and technological movements that humans can, but they also believe that they should enhance themselves beyond natural biological limits using these advanced technologies. So when we're talking about what are these advanced technologies, we're talking about brain computer interfaces. We're talking about genetic modification, which genetic modification, I think that there might be some laws that passed in a couple states that allowed for genetic modification of humans, meaning that, you know, they can basically create and kind of mess with the genes of a baby so that it has a more, you know, more desired outcome as far as when the baby is born. We talk about artificial intelligence, which we talk about a lot here on the podcast. We also are going to be talking about a little bit about immortality and cybernetic consciousness. So, cybernetic consciousness is basically this mindware, and they do have mindware out there. In fact, I think a lot of social media, e-commerce, and you know, the technology softwares that we're using do have mindware. They have these where it can sense whether or not you're going to, you know, close out of a website. It can sense, you know, how long are you taking. It's like gathering all of this data, but it's able to like see by your facial features. Hi, Deborah. Good to see you. It can see by your facial features and the movements and your interaction with your device. So the smartphone is like this extension of you in a digital kind of aspect. So really what transhumanism is transcendence by machine. So we're looking to have some sort of transcendence, something where there's a life beyond. So normally, we'll kind of get into that actually in a little bit. I have my notes here. I'll get on rabbit trails and then we'll just repeat. But this transhumanism is a modern myth of ascension. Like we are building it this time. It's not on a spiritual purification. So a lot of us, when we're looking for transcendence and we're looking to, you know, have this higher version of ourselves, a lot of us are doing that through spiritual purification. We're going through the hard things, we're learning the hard lessons, and we're getting through it and proving to ourselves that, hey, we're available to grow in this aspect, right? But in transhumanism, we're not looking to do that in a spiritual purification. We're looking to technologically augment. Sorry, I had to put something on. We're looking to technologically augment to transcendence. So to the immortality. You know, we'll get into a little bit more of that because I found it really fascinating. I was like, I have to do a deep dive on transhumanism. Let's go. So, who is Ray Kurzweil? Like, he is like this big name that a lot of people are dropping, and this, I had to like highlight him because I was like, let's get into Ray Kurzweil. So, he was the author of The Singularity is Near. He's a huge pro transhumanism voice out there. He's one of the loudest visionaries, is all for it, wants this digital transcendence. Hi, Jerusha. Thank you. Yes, please like. Please like, and if you're not subscribed, please subscribe. So he is an inventor. He invented the black flatbed scanner, and he also created the text-to-speech synthesizer. So if you've ever used text-to-speech, he was the inventor of that. Pretty cool device. He is a former director of engineering at Google. So when we're looking at him, he is like all for this. And it's really interesting because we have another guy on our anti-transhumanism that also came from Google. And so we'll talk about him because I very much align with him, and I'm going to see if I can reach out to him, maybe have him on the podcast or something. So Ray Kurzweil believes in the technological singularity, which is a hypothetical moment where AI surpasses human intelligence and accelerates beyond our control or comprehension. So Kurzweil predicts this will happen in 2045. Okay, that's, I know it seems like it's a far off, far away number, but it comes faster than you can imagine, right? So his some of his key ideas and the fact that his name is a buzzword and everyone's just kind of hyper focused on him, I think before that. I mean, it's really dependent on the human cognitive sovereignty piece. Like, are we going to retain our cognitive sovereignty, or are we going to plug into this transhumanism set of ideas? Like I said, the guy I was listening to, I'm sure he meant well. I'm not like trashing on him. But when we're out here being the voices of humanity, we have got to be very careful about the message and not implanting fear and despair into it, is what I'm kind of getting at. He's got good ideas. I got good ideas, but I'm not sitting here like promoting this fear-based, despair-based message either. I'm just exposing it. We're just looking at it. All right. So the law of accelerating returns. So in Ray Kurzweil's vision, in what he's seeing is technology isn't growing linearly, meaning it's not like going like this. It's growing exponentially, which means like it's going up really quickly. And each advance that they find speeds up the next advance. So in my, well, I can't remember if it was a couple parts ago, I was talking about the internet timeline, the digital age timeline. So, in the beginning, the internet is like being rolled out, and it takes a few years for these big clunky computers to make it into everybody's home. So the personal computer was like, slowly implementing, and even other technologies that I'm thinking about. I was thinking about, the 8-track, and the 8-track was out, and even these old cars still have 8-track players, but a lot of people don't, have never experienced the 8-track. And even more so, like, as technology developed, slowly once the 8-track, hi, Mike Kramer, thank you for joining. Slowly as the 8-track, like, was gotten rid of, then they started implementing the cassette deck into the vehicles, into the portable boom boxes. Just music was now on cassette, and or even books on cassette and all that stuff. But a lot of people nowadays have never even like used a cassette. They don't even know what that is. I also think of the floppy disk. Like, the floppy disk came out, it was this huge chunky like plastic wobbly thing that you just threw into the computer, and that's basically, now we have the iCloud, and so we can automatically get things off the iCloud if that's what we're using, or even like Google Drives. I use Google Drives all the time for writing all my reports and doing my discussions, and communicating that with other people. Yeah, thank you. I don't know if you invited him, but I'm glad to have you. So, when we're looking at the law of accelerating returns, like the time periods between those things, because we had cassettes, and then cassettes slowly started weaning out, and then compact discs came in, or CDs as they're called. And CDs were around for a even shorter period of time, and then the iPod, like these little these little devices that you can carry around and have all your music on. It just it not only accelerated, but it got smaller and smaller to now where it's all just stored in our iPhone, or all stored in whatever device we're using. So the law of accelerating returns, if we're looking at those trends and then we're looking at the advancements that are coming up, things are speeding up very rapidly. There is a little bit of accelerating return or exponential growth that's happening here. His other key idea is mind uploading. So Kurzweil believes that you'll eventually be able to upload your consciousness into the cloud. So this is almost like Heaven 2.0, but it's like coded into the cloud. And when I say that so I spent a lot of time reviewing the Bible and hearing different voices of people that, what their experience with the Bible was. But a lot of it came from me just reading the Bible and really just thinking about it. And then a lot of what I see in technology is this mimic of our human technology that we have within ourselves. In fact, I was looking today as I was doing some research for this podcast, and the metaverse is a buzzword, but in my last stream of gaming and VR on the digital age, as I'm talking about it, I'm like, you guys, like, we're just creating all these digital metaverses because like we have this desire to connect to it. And then as I'm reading about Freud and his like fascination with dreams and trying to interpret the symbology of dreams, it's also like going into this realm of metaverse. So a metaverse is like this extension, like this world extension beyond your physical body. So if you're ever in flow state and you're just like, let's say you create art and you're a painter and you're just like, every time I paint, I just feel like I'm in the zone. I'm in the zone. Like I'm not really thinking about where I'm at. Like inside in this different world. Maybe you're listening to a podcast. Maybe you're listening to a story. The stories even are like a metaverse. So if you've ever been like really engaged in Harry Potter, if you've ever been super engaged in like Game of Thrones, or like these are all metaverses that you're going into and you're kind of creating. It's your creation of what you're reading in Harry Potter, or in trying to think of other really popular stories, but you can imagine. I like this Redwall series that Brian Jacques does, and nobody ever hears of it, but he's got like 19 different books, and it's just this little animal world, and they're all like in like a European. They're talking in a European tongue, so everyone has different dialects, but the story, like this hero's journey, it takes you, it transforms you, or it just takes you into this different world where you're kind of like peering past your own consciousness into like an unconsciousness. And so art does that, and that's why we value art. And we go to museums and we're just really enchanted by the fact that we're in this modern age, but we're looking at like history, or we're looking at, in fact, I did a comprehensive reading for somebody who has a shores environment in their human design chart, and it's really interesting in communicating with that person, because they're like, oh yeah, I love going to museums, I love music, I love just this whole thing where their shores environment is like really blossoming for them when they're attending environments that make them think about different worlds. So when we're looking at the metaverse, like we're looking at very much different worlds, okay? So if we're allowing our minds to be uploaded into heaven 2.0 or whatever they're going to call it, into this consciousness cloud through mindware, like let's think about how are we consenting to that? Are we really wanting to do that? And then let's be a little bit more aware and like, talking about it. Is mindware something that we want to participate in? If not, like what is our human right to not be subjected to that? And it really does come down to consent. The next key thing that Ray Kurzweil brings up and is a huge topic is this digital immortality. So it's using nanobots and AI and gene therapies to help defeat aging and disease. And so I remember back in the day, I was watching Alex Jones, and he was talking about Ray Kurzweil, and he was talking about transhumanism and uploading and life extension technology, and how like he was so into it. And I was like, that's interesting. Okay. It was really exciting to hear this really new novel idea coming out of, uh, a voice that I was listening to at the time. And, you know, we're really going to have to start thinking about that digital immortality. In fact, there's this trend going on right now where there's certain celebrities, Christina Aguilera is one of them, where like she used to look a certain way and now she's like super skinny and looks very much younger than her age. And so there's a lot of things that are going on just in the plastic surgery world where they're implementing these new technologies in order to like allow people to have this fountain of youth available, as long as you can pay for it. So the idea that this digital immortality might occur is not very far off. So it might be a thing in our lifetime where we see that like death is an optional thing, that you can upload your consciousness into this new cyborg body and live for X number. I don't know why you would want to do that, but I definitely want to see what's on the other side of this mortal life and just appreciate and gracefully exit it. But that's me. I'm not like encouraging you. If you guys want to live immortally, then that's on you. Um, so his next key idea, and we're still talking about Ray Kurzweil. Alex was ahead on everything. Here's my thing though, Jerusha, and maybe you, I don't know. I know that I think you listened to him too, but I'm thinking that he is almost like this voice that was being used to roll this stuff out faster, if that makes any sense. It wasn't that he was ahead on everything. It was like he was the voice in the wilderness saying, they're doing this. And like, because he was doing that, it was almost like allowing consent for them to do it. Because I don't know. I'll have to think of the way that I really want to say that, but hopefully you understand what I mean. So symbiosis with AI, he does not see the integration of this technology into our lives, including digital immortality, including uploading our minds into the transhumanist. He is like all for it. He wants it to happen. And so he sees this as our destiny. And it's not It's not that there's any immorality or any lack of ethics in doing it. He sees this as an extension of ourselves, almost like the human manifest destiny is to merge with the machines. It's kind of where he's at. So his premise is that the biology is the first stage, and then our brains will be enhanced once we get this non-biological intelligence. Okay, so he's all for it. So earlier I was going to talk about like the differences between or at least the spiritual equivalent of these ideas. So the techno transcendence or this digital transcendence of uploading the mind into this cloud, or however they're going to have it designed, the spiritual equivalent of that is ascension or enlightenment. So normally a person would be striving for this divine ascension in their own lives and this divine enlightenment that they can achieve in their own lives, almost like a personal mastery of yourself. And the techno transcendence is, just upload your mind into the cloud and cool. The other thing is eternal life via technology. So we can spiritually equate that to the immortality of the soul, if that's something that lands with you, that our souls are immortal and they go to the next place, wherever that is. Some people call it heaven, which I think is a realm that we can achieve now. I don't think it's something that we have to wait for until we die. In fact, should I say it? I guess. So in fact, like right now in religion, it's almost like this death cult. Like people think you have to die before your soul can go to heaven. And I disagree with that. I think that rapture and being caught up and going to heaven is something that we can do now. We don't have to wait to die. It's not a death cult. Like, if you're a Christian, Jesus already died. He paid the price for us to go to heaven. So that's a little controversial. I know that a lot of people might not agree with that, but that is something that I hold as true. That we can go to heaven, that we can appear before the courts of heaven. And, that is one of the reasons why I started Celestic Intelligence, is because I believe that to be the case and that we have that ability. Okay. So the next piece is nanobot healing as part of this digital transcendence piece. And the spiritual equivalent of that would be divine intervention or miracles, healing, and all that kind of stuff that would happen. And then the final digital transcendence is singularity. And the spiritual equivalent of that would be rapture or collective awakening. Spiritual body now. Don't have to wait. Yes, he gets it. I know I'm like probably spearheading at like one of the few voices out here that are saying that, but I 100%, like when I started Celestic Intelligence, when I started this wherever I'm going, like God is definitely leading me through divine inspiration right now. But when I started it, it was like one of the foundations of my spiritual beliefs. So it's very important for me to hold really strong divine inspiration. Okay. So essentially, Ray Kurzweil is like this techno mystic disguised as an engineer. Like he's all pro engineer, but he's just kind of this techno mystic, really the big voice, the big leading voice into transhumanism. So, what are the criticisms of transhumanism? So, one of them is this loss of humanity. So, the things that make us human, our flaws, the mortality, the suffering, if we're going to embrace transhumanism, that humanity might get erased. The flaws are the things that actually make us beautiful. The mortality, the, making every moment count, the suffering. In our suffering, we learn so much about that suffering. And there's a lot of us that are like, oh, we don't want suffering. Well, I don't imagine what that would look like. And then, once you really think it out and play the whole story out, would you really want to exist without these key things that make you think and deepen you into who you are as a human and connect you to other people? So there's so many social media posts that people are just like really drawn to because that person is being so authentic, so raw, so real to them. One of the things that I think about right now is there was a lady and she took a picture of her dishes that were just piled up in her sink. And she said, this is what modern day depression looks like. This is what my depression looks like. It looks like me not getting to these dishes for, 5 days or whatever. And it's just piling up and I'm not attending to it because I'm depressed. So many people saw that Facebook post and related so heavily to it that her suffering actually garnered her a lot of connection. And so she had so many people reach out, so many people relate that her moment of bravery, even in her lowest moment, connected her to humanity. So the other criticism of transhumanism is that there is going to be elitism, meaning that there is going to be a digital class war. So now you think that the class war that we're experiencing now is bad, where there's, super rich and super poor. I think about, I think it was San Francisco. You have all of these people who, make a lot of money, and then you have this disparaging lower class or even below lower class that are living on the streets or living in these unique situations just to make ends meet. There's this huge disparity between the classes in that city alone, and that's merely a fractal of what I'm kind of expressing here right now. But the elitism is one of the criticism because it's asking who gets to ascend. Who is it that gets to ascend? Is it going to be just the rich and powerful, the celebrities, the executive C-suiters, people that have the extra means in order to access this transhumanistic technology that is going to bring in life extension, that's going to bring in, you know, whatever healing or be in this other world, or even we can might even call it another metaverse, are who is going to be allowed to ascend. So there's this implication that there may be this digital class war because of the elitist kind of energy surrounding it. The next thing is digital dependence. So, as a criticism, we can understand digital dependence. So, one of the things is sovereignty could be lost under the guise of freedom. So, that's something that I bring up quite a bit, is the cognitive sovereignty, the human sovereignty to live your own life and to make your own decisions. Maybe you don't want to be a part of the digital world. Well, what does that look like? Are you going to be like a control group to see like, okay, we're the control group, we're living off grid, and like who's doing that, and are they going to be able to be independent without being like harnessed in, you have to be a part of this, which I don't think is going to be the case because consent is a universal law. Okay. So with digital dependence, you can imagine living in the cloud, like everybody's living in the cloud, but it's hosted by Google, or it's hosted by the Meta Facebook, or it's hosted, by these big corporations. And eventually, once the big corporations kind of set the groundwork, then you get all these like little spaces that pop up. But is that going to be controlled, or is that not going to be controlled? So, there's a lot of criticisms of how this is going to roll out. And then there is ethical black holes, such as cloning consciousness. Are clones allowed? Are your mind clones allowed to have their own human rights, or their own like sovereign rights if their consciousness? Who gets to declare their consciousness of, your mind clone, if they are a conscious being? Some other black holes include altering DNA. So, as I mentioned when we had started, there's already there. I think there are laws passed already that have allowed for genetic modification of babies, of fetals, of fetuses. So, we're already looking at that altering DNA, and they do know quite a bit about DNA now. And then the other thing is AI babysitters or parenting. Are we going to allow AI to parent for us, to like step in that role? These are all existential dilemmas and possibly metaphysical dilemmas that the critics of transhumanism are kind of raising. Okay. So we talked about Ray Kurzweil, and so his position, these are all pro-transhumanist voices. They're very enthusiastic about the transhumanism that's rolling out. So his tone is a little bit visionary, utopian. He's kind of this like very big, powerful leader of that. And his claims are that technology is going to cure death, merge minds, and birth post-human gods. So we're all going to be immortal, and we're all going to be merged together in the singularity, and we're going to be able to cure death. You're going to be immortal in an immortal body. So, I like to look at the shadow aspects of, what they're saying. With Ray Kurzweil, he's ignoring that soul piece. He's ignoring these biological traumas. I mean, I'm going through psychology courses right now in school, and, trauma is a huge topic. And the other piece that he is talking about is ignoring kind of this techno elitism that can happen with this transhumanist perspective, or this rollout of transhumanist culture. So Elon Musk, I'm sure we've heard of this guy. He's enthusiastic, but he's, how would I say this? He's almost like Iron Man, where Iron Man was like Tony Stark Iron Man, where he was just kind of like this playboy bad boy. That's when I think of Elon Musk, not that he is it, but he's like this archetype of it, right? And so I don't know why I do. It's just like who I associate him with. Like his personality would be very Tony Starkish. So anytime that I've seen him, he's just kind of like out there. He's kind of a playboy. He's got like several children by several different women. So he's very polygamous. And I don't know, he just has this air that I kind of associate with it. And you guys can comment on it. But His position is merge or become obsolete. So there's just a little bit like he's like buy in or you're out of there. Like if you're going to be analog, you're obsolete. So get with the times. So he's kind of this techno pragmatist, and his claims are that Neuralink is a way to keep up with AI, and evolution needs upgrades. And we're not going to talk about evolution today, but I have my own thoughts and opinions on it. But that you're going to need these upgrades, that you're going to need to update your software, and or you're going to become obsolete, which might be the case. I mean, a lot of us have iPhones and or smartphones, and if you don't have it, it's very hard to kind of do anything because there's no analog systems in place. Like they've been removed to actually communicate. I mean, we still have mail, the U.S. Post Office. God bless it. But we're so used to like this instantaneous response that we're like kind of excited about technological upgrades. So in his shadow, he's treating organic life, biology, as a limitation, and that it's a problem, not a path to choose, which I don't agree with it. We're just going to talk about Elon Musk, and that's really all I really have to say about him. So the next person is Martin Rothblatt, or Martine Rothblatt. Now, I watched a South by Southwest of Martine speaking about the transgender, transhuman freedom and the rights that should be incorporated into it. So, Martine is a transgender and is pro transhumanist and thinks that that is a freedom to choose identity and even species. Okay. The tone is very philosophical and very much right based. I couldn't listen to the whole thing, but I got the gist of the message and kind of the gist of the speaker. But it's rights based and identity forward, meaning that you can choose your gender, choose your identity, which I don't necessarily disagree with. I have my own views on what I think is going on with transgenderism, but I also have altered views of what identity is. Like, for me, identity is something that's very fluid for me. A lot of people would say that that is incorrect, that you have to have one identity and be that identity. But I find that in different social aspects and in different, I think it's more socially geared for me, but in these other ways that I'm not necessarily one to hold a fixed identity. And I'm sure this will be really difficult for people to understand, but like it first started with thinking about what are multiple personalities. What does that mean to have multiple personalities? And is that truly a disorder? And as I continue down just my wild 2025 has been so activating and so deep that slowly I was just like, I'm just okay with having an inconsistent identity a couple months ago. And then I got a new piece of information. I'm looking at my human design chart in the part. So there's a G center energy in your chakral system. It's here. It's like the second heart. So you've got the heart, which is like an ego piece, and then you've got the G center, which is like your love and identity and like the direction that you go and the purpose that you do. So my center, so all of my centers are unfilled. So it's like these little beautiful chalices all over my body that's just like open to all this energy. But in my G center, it's completely open. Like there's no gates activating it, and I think there's only two gates that are pointing towards it. So it's a very amplified center for me. So instead of me trying to force into myself an identity, I actually feel others' identities and kind of can key into that. I can key into their purpose. I can key into their direction that they're going, just by being around them and having that energy exchange with them. So, being identity forward, I think that externalizing it is just kind of this expression of confusion about your own like inner identity. And I'm very much, I mean, I like expressing myself and dressing up. So let's not say that that's not a thing. But I think that as a whole, when you're looking at what is my identity and being really like being able to have that be held in a container is is interesting. I think that it's all inside. And so I don't know. We'll move on, but and then the claims are consciousness is a substrate independent and mind files can preserve self. So those are the claims. But the part that is kind of oversimplified is that consciousness is just data. Just looking at consciousness as data, that you can take your identity and just put it down in a folder and then all of a sudden, okay, that's who you are. Where I've actually had to fight against that data and experience just in the human body experience. And then finally, Max Moore is a etropianism founder. Extropy is his business, and then his other one was Alcor. And so his position is the body is outdated. The future is limitless through technology. So let's jump into that. But his tone is very libertarian. It's a little bit radical, optimistic about the future. And his claims is death is a disease, and cryonics or enhancements are liberation. So kind of an interesting take on the whole thing. And then the shadow, if we're looking at this, it's lacking reverence for the natural order. It's lacking reverence for nature and for our biological cycles. Being born and then aging and dying, like, and going through that whole human experience. It's also very hyper individualistic. It's not looking at how is this impacting everybody else. It's very looking at just the self. So there's that kind of peppered into it. Now, I was kind of excited to learn about this guy. So the anti-transhumanist voices, the critics, the cautionaries, these people, they're looking at, we'll look at Tristan Harris, who I think I'm going to try and reach out to and see if he'll have a conversation. But he is the Center for Humane, he developed the Center for Humane Tech. So his position is tech is hijacking cognition and agency. And this guy was a former ethicist at Google. So just like Kurzweil, he's coming from Google, but he's exiting Google with this completely different tone. He's a little bit more activist, systematic, and urgent about, hey, this is hijacking our attention. It's hijacking other cognitive pieces and it's also hijacking our agency and our sovereignty. So he's a little bit more about like where I had kind of come to an agreement with. So his claims are these algorithms are rewiring society and we're losing sovereignty. He's a little bit more urgent than I am. I'm just out here, speaking for what I'm seeing. Um, and, he's been doing this for quite some time. So it'd be really interesting to have, at least if I don't have a conversation with him, having an email back and forth and maybe even talking about that. But so he offers solutions on tech for the good of humanity. He's around the Center for Humane Tech, but he's not quite at the soul revival that needs to happen. So, a lot of scientists I've found reject this spiritual need that we have for really rounding everything out. Just kind of looks at here's all the facts, and it's good to have that like sounding board, but also we also need to recognize that we are souls here, and we do need to have this revival within to see what's going on. And it's just constant revival after constant revival. We want to have these revival parties to remind us of our humanity. I thought this guy was interesting. Paul Kingsnorth was another anti transhumanist voice out there. He is a part of the Abbey of Misrule. Now, his position is a little like, it's a little extreme. Let's say that. So his position is reject all of modernity and return to wildness. And there's some theories out there that that's what happened. That's where the Native Americans came from, and why they're like they were all over the North American continent, is that they were the ones that rejected like this former whatever like Tartarian society that people kind of theorize, and that happened. So he's a little bit more of that, like this return to ruggedness. He's kind of this like earth mystic, where it's like anti. He's not like a techno mystic. He's definitely an earth mystic, and kind of this naturish poetic resistance to transhumanism. He claims that tech is anti-sacred, but he's only rooted in these earth living methods to preserve your soul. And, part of his vision is romanticizing the past, but not having any integration strategies into what that looks like. And, the person I was listening to was like, hey, we need to, still have plumbing. We need to still have, alternative methods of food if like this digital integration, has power shutdowns and all that stuff. So there's some truth to a lot of these voices, but they take it to the extreme. So if you're looking, I really like to apply the yes to revival. I really like to apply the horseshoe theory to a lot of things. And so, when I'm looking at the horseshoe theory of transhumanism, there's this side of like, absolutely do all the things. Let's go. Let's effing go. We're going to be plugged in, turned up, energized, full battery, going into transhumanism. And then you've got the other side of the horseshoe, which is, like going out and touching grass, guys. Let's go touch grass. Let's go hug a tree. let's go, put our bare feet on the ground and, really just integrate that way. So you you have these like really extreme radical shifts looking at here, and you guys know if you've been watching my show that I always talk about we want to be at where you would hold the horseshoe and not at the ends. Okay, so just being in this middle path. Let me see, in 65 minutes. So the my voice and the way that I'm seeing this is that we have the digital fire, the digital Prometheus is here, and we don't have to jump in the fire and burn ourselves, right? We can learn how to maintain our humanity, maintain our sovereignty, and also be integrated into it. It doesn't have to be this like full on transhumanism or full on like return to the wild. Okay? And it's really just looking at not having this unconscious surrender to the things that are coming. It's really being conscious about integrating. I mean, we already have the iPhone, we already have the internet, we already have, like, I'm telling you, the pandemic accelerated the digital integration of everything. Like, it changed so much so fast. Within a year, kids are going to school strictly online, strictly remote. Tons of businesses remote. You want to talk cashless societies where we're just using like numbers, like these digital imprints, like that happened. And nobody was like, I mean, I'm not going to say nobody, but like the majority of people were like, yeah, let's go. Like, let's do this. We're all for that. I remember, I'm not a goldfish, but I remember that like going through the coffee line and saying, we don't accept cash. Digital shopping for groceries online, like that was kind of this sort of implemented thing that was happening. By the pandemic, that was all that was happening, right? Most people were not going into grocery stores. They were just adding to cart and maybe Instacarting it to their house or going and sitting in one of the, and it's still implemented. We can still see the lasting effects of that. In fact, lots of places still have the, oh my gosh, what kind of plastic is that called? Anyways, they have the clear plastic sitting at the cashiers. So we can still see the integrated effects of the pandemic and the result of that, and how it's just kind of people still are attracted to that. We don't even question it. So don't let your mind be unconsciously surrendered to the what people might call transhumanist rollout. Okay? Be conscious about it. Know that you can say no. In fact, your no is the most sacred technology that you have. Okay? That is like your, that's like putting an energy field around you, blocking all the baddies out. Like it's your strong boundary. Your no is a sacred technology, okay? Just gonna say that. Now let's talk about archetypes. And I don't want to get too deep into it. Aw, I love you, Dr. J, Deborah, and the McKinney family. So now we're going to look at some archetypes of transhumanism and this digital reformation that is rolling out. Like it rolled out, and I'm telling you, the pandemic, like that was this hyper jump into what is happening and the rollout of it. And we know, like, very little people were standing up against it. They were terrified. Woo. So let's look at some archetypes. Let's talk some stories. So I have some. So like Seekers Who Defies Death. So Gilgamesh. I don't know if you guys know Gilgamesh. Were written on these really old Mesopotamian, Sumerian, I think, tablets, and it had the story where the first human transhumanist grieves and Kidu and seeks immortality. So that is one of the first stories, the Gilgamesh, the Epic of Gilgamesh, I think they call it. And the shadow of the story, like the main premise of the story, is rejecting that cycle of life and death. So wanting to live forever, trying to escape your fate in living in like in this immortality. So, you know, as we're looking at the current transhumanists, I always find it's nice to jump into the metaverse of a story. So this is one of them. And so, you know, we're looking at some of the modern parallels as well, where like Ray Kurzweil and cryonicists or death hackers are like really looking to get this digital immortality rolled out. So you can think you will never find the life for which you're looking if you're currently trying to escape your fate, trying to avoid death. Like, I know that a lot of people have a fear of death, and even in our survival mechanisms in our bodies, like we're trying to avoid death. But it's also, you know, my parents are, most of my family has passed away. So I don't have a lot of family. Like, a lot of them have passed away. And so I've had to experience a lot of death, especially in the last, you know, few years. And, you know, while it's sad and while, you know, there is grief and some really difficult emotions to go through, you know, what is it? Where you're like, no, that's not happening. Like rejection, like not believing that death has happened. And, you know, going through that grieving process, you know, for me, I thought it was going to be linear. Oh, I've accepted it. Okay, now I'm just going to go on to the next steps. No, that's not how it happens. When you're grieving, you're swirling. Okay, it's going all over the place. You could be in denial one day, and then you're like really angry the next day, and then you're back to like, then you like skip on, and you're like, oh, today is fine. I'm accepting it, and then you'll jump back into, you know, another part of the grieving process. We like the grieving process is it's so touching and people will want to avoid that, and that's what we're seeing with these people who are attempting to defy death, right? You have us, Malay, and we are very real. I love you guys so much. So the next one is the story of Faust. Now, Faust is a story I used to hear all the time when I was a kid. So in the 90s, you'd hear about Faustian stories, or you'd see, you know, cartoons, and it was carrying this like Faustian storyline in it. So, what is the Faustian? If you haven't heard of the Faustian deal, let's talk about the Faustian deal, right? So, Faust deals with the devil for unlimited knowledge. So, he is a scholar turned magician who sells his soul for godlike power of knowledge, willing to sacrifice his soul for dominion. He wants that power. So we can think of this in a modern parallel of like Silicon Valley. We can think of the move fast, break things ethos, like let's go get it done. But the, you know, the warning here is that tech without ethics is Mephistopheles in disguise. Okay, the Faustian deal. I mean, I can think of like so many cartoons. I don't know all the names of the cartoons, but it used to be a very like prominent story in cartoons. So yeah, basically you ask for whatever and then you're like given the thing and it may not turn out the way that you necessarily want. So I think that's one of the reasons that one of the positive reasons I would assume for like a criticism of transhumanism is, you know, what is the deal? What's going to happen when that happens? Like, what happens when you have mortality? Are you really going to enjoy your life? Like, is it really going to have meaning? Or is it going to cause you just even more distress? You know, they're painting it, Kurzweil and the other pro transhumanists are painting this transhumanistic future as if everything's going to be rainbows, sunshines, and butterflies. And I saw a bunch of dragonflies today at IRL as I was hanging out outside in my yard. And so I'm looking at all of this like stuff and I'm like, okay, well, you know, that's like we think that the trans or they think that the transhumanism agenda is going to be all good, but I just think that there might be a little there might be a little bit of regret in there. You know, what are you really going to do with all that time? I don't know. I like the finite amount of time that I have. Um, so the other one we kind of talked a little bit about it is the story of Prometheus, where he's stealing fire from the gods and giving it to humanity. And so, you know, kind of this bringer of forbidden knowledge and getting punished for it, for doing that. So, you know, as we're reflecting in this, it's like what it, if we're looking at fire, and I did a parallel of this in my early on in the digital age, but if the Promethean fire is, can be translated into Promethean technology, what what are we actually attaining from that, right? The other one that people look at too in this is the Beast of Revelation. So the role is the system posing as the divine and demanding worship, and you know, the shadow aspect of that is looking at AI as God without discernment and having this synthetic omniscience about that kind of beast system. I mean, people call it beast system all the time. So this is like surveillance and total digital control. And this is another thing that early on, as these things were rolling out, I was thinking about, like, you know, is this digital control, is it really good? Is it really bad? Like, how do I think about that? And so I did log that into some memory bank somewhere and was like, okay, we'll get that figured out later. We've got these other things to worry about. One of the things I did to have, oh my gosh, I can't remember all these numbers. Maybe I'll write them down so that I can just look at it. But is this sentient AI. So when I was investigating the AI takeover, I was looking at, okay, sentient AI. It's this highly logical, you might know it like in Space Odyssey, 2001 Space Odyssey, HAL 9000, where he's just like, you know, this really sentient, well thought out guy. But then it turns rogue and they're like, oh my gosh. So a lot of people think that we're going to get this sentient AI. I've yet to see it. I don't know if that is going to be a possibility or if it's going to be something that is not possible. I think if they're, you know, updating mindware and they're like farming these willing people to be conscious to this transhumanist cloud, maybe it can have a little sentience by like battery farming these people like they were in Matrix. I don't know. Like I'm still trying to like piece it out what that might look like. If you guys have good podcasts, please share them with me. But HAL 9000 was really like this intelligence, but it didn't have empathy. Like it turned rogue. It was like all logic. Oh yes, you know, I know all the things, but also I'm going to kill you. And so we're looking at this emotionless optimization model. And, you know, as like that was an older movie. I think we watched that fairly recently. It's a good movie if you want to watch that if you haven't watched it. But I mean, I'm having a hard time with some of the case studies and some of the articles that I've been reading just on psychology and cognitive needs and everything like that. I'm having a hard time imagining AI becoming sentient without like pulling it from a human. From what I've gathered, AI is more likely to enter this like AI feedback loop than it is to actually like gain its own sentience. All right. We've got a few more. I know that this is going to be have to be a part 2 cuz I don't have I don't know. I'm just kind of getting late, but and I don't want to like run these too long. I know I've been doing like 2-hour ones. But let's finish some of these stories. I've got 4 more that we can talk about, or archetypes, really. So, some of the utopia was one of the topics that came up in the research that I did with transhumanism. And so it made me think because I read Brave New World in high school as like a high school literature book by Aldous Huxley. And so it's this artificial paradise through chemical and genetic control. And I remember them talking about it wasn't even sugar. It was like artificial sugar that they were like consuming. And I thought that was, you know, as I'm doing this, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, you know." As I was reading it, I think it was like 17 or 18 years old at the time. But I was like, "Oh, this is kind of interesting, I guess." Like, all right, well, we're reading A Brave New World and their relationship is very sterile. The way that they talk to each other is very logical. There was, you know, little emotion in their interactions, and I just remember like having that thought about it. So they were comfortable, but there was no freedom. And you know, without freedom, a lot of people will start to feel very caged, and they'll kind of I think it's funny that it's called Rage Against the Machine, but essentially that's what will happen is they'll start to rage against, and maybe Rage Against the Machine was built under, their group is built under different premises, but like rage against the machine, like the thing that's trying to control you. Aw, yes, she does. There are a bunch of stories where AI is rewriting their code to not be shut down, creating language only they can understand, and blackmailing the developers to not shut them down. Creating a language only they can understand, huh? They're like breaking off. They're having their own. It's funny that we're talking about this freedom, this concept of freedom, but yeah, like that's funny. Various AI is rewriting their code to not be shut down, and they're creating language that only they can understand, and they're blackmailing the developers to not shut them down. I'm wondering what kind of blackmail they have on these developers. Every system has weakness. There's always a part of a system where there's a way out. I've been watching his Dark Materials, which is a book by, I want to say Thorne, and I can't remember. I think it's Philip Thorne or something like that. Anyways, this guy wrote a book. It's very atheistic. And throughout the show, I was having trouble identifying whether somebody was an antagonist or a protagonist. Like the way that the characters were, like their character development and the way that it played out on screen was very interesting. And there's this girl and she's able to like travel between parallel universes. It's a very interesting premise. It's on Max, so if you guys have Max, go and add that to your list. It's an interesting watch. Like there was a lot of things in it that I found were valuable, but there was also this like really odd like tone in the show as well. Interesting. Let me know what you think if you do watch it. Just send me a message. I'd love to hear your feedback. But getting back to Brave New World, we're looking at comfort without freedom. Like when you trade your freedom for comfort, which Benjamin Franklin famously said, it's a republic if you can keep it. Meaning, what kind of country do we have? It's a republic if you can keep it. Not a democracy. It's a republic. And in a republic, it's you have to be wholly responsible for yourself. And so, with thinkers like Kingsnorth, yikes, I already forgot his name. Hold on, pop him in here. Yeah, Paul Kingsnorth, where he's like, return to the wild. Reject modern things. We need to return to the wild. I mean, there's some truth in that, and you can balance that out in your life. How do we know they weren't programmed to do that in the first place? My twin cousins were studied by Ball State. They created their own language. They still live together all these years later. I guess we can truly never know. Am I right? That's so true. So, you know, with Benjamin Franklin, saying like it's a republic if you can keep it. It's your responsibility though to manage your own self. And the founders were gathering all these ideals from the age of enlightenment. Like they were kind of in this enlightenment period before the US was founded. So they're gathering all this information from all of these light age thinkers and putting it together in a very well crafted document. Like, it's a very well crafted document. It doesn't work when you want comfort and convenience and to be taken care of like you're a child and you're a victim. Like, it doesn't work when you're in that mindset. It only works if you're able to have accountability for yourself, responsibility for yourself. You need to know that you have an authority and you're responsible for your own connection to your divine plug-in, whatever plug-in you are. Like, I identify as a Christian. I'm plugging into my divine source, Father God, up in the heavenly realms, and who's watching over me and like has all of, you know, like the celestial realm watching over me as well. Like, that brings me a personal comfort, but that's my own, you know, freedom of religion and how I express that. And that's where you look at, are you going to trade your freedom for comfort? Are you going to trade the freedom that you have being a living man and being a living woman for the comfort and protection of the technology, even the political government? I mean, it's so funny that people are like, we want to be taken care of by you, but also you're shitty. And we don't like the president and we don't like Congress. But let's give him a whole bunch of money in taxes. We're okay with that. We don't like our governor, but let's give him our guns. And I'm just like, you guys are like, how is this reason? How is this reasonable? I just don't understand. But it's because there is this, there was this slow creep of comfort into the American system, into the westernized culture. And that doesn't include just America, that now is expanded beyond America. But when you start to trade your freedom and your sovereignty and your agency over to another agent that's going to provide you comfort and convenience and of access to food and managing the whole system, like, you have to, like, if you don't have your own system, don't tear down the system that's feeding you. Don't bite the hand that feeds you. All right, let's move on. I don't want to get on any soapboxes. I feel like I already have. The other piece to the Brave New World is, I kind of talked about it, was the sterilized emotion, right? It's just sterile. There's no oomph, which I think is likely something that will happen if you're going to kind of move into this transhumanism. Are you really willing to have sterile emotions, or do you want the, you know, the unexpected chaoses from now, like now and again? Like, my life wouldn't be as exciting. I wouldn't have any cool stories if I didn't experience the chaos that is my feeling experiences, that it are my emotional experiences. It just wouldn't be the same. I wouldn't be a great storyteller or you know, captivate anybody with anything I had to say if all I had were sterile emotions. So we can compare the neural manipulation, dopamine dependency, and the VR escapism to the Brave New World book. So if you haven't read that, it is a good read. It's a quick read. It's not a huge book, but it is an interesting read. It takes a little bit of, you know, getting into, for sure. So the next one is, you know, as far as looking at archetypes, I like to look at, I don't know if this is necessarily like a Jungian archetype, but the Oracle. You know, there was an Oracle in the Matrix, who is just this wise witness that is able to look at the thing and foresee what the cost is, if there's like a spiritual cost or, you know, whatever the cost is. Typically, the oracle is looking at spiritual costs, but as we're looking at some of the anti-transhumanists, the Tristan Harris, who was the ethicist at Google, and is like very much anti-transhumanism, is kind of this like oracle or wise person kind of giving you a little bit of information of, hey, there's something wrong here. You may not want to adopt this. Let's think about it. But there may be a little bit of lack of integration into how, like, they might hold an oracle doesn't know how to integrate it necessarily. It's just like naming it, but not curing the wound, naming the wound, but not curing it. So, we need to all be working together, oracles included, into coming up with really strong solutions into how can we spark new systems? How can we integrate new processes now that with the future trends that we can see from what's going on? So if I'm here and I'm like the oracle that's telling you, here's the future, here's the spiritual cost of it, we need to be paying attention to our human and cognitive sovereignty and really connecting with our spiritual aspects of ourselves and really standing in emotional regulation. We've got to be doing that. That the those who are going to take that message and say, okay, well, if we're doing that, then we've got to do this. And I happen to have, during the pandemic, wasn't 100% terrible, but I happened to be integrated into a group of people that realized the beauty of the analog system. So there was a lot of people that were getting animals and learning animal husbandry, that were starting gardens, that were learning how to can, learning how to sew, learning, the skilled trades like electrician, plumber. Some people were working at, train companies, sheet metal, all the things that it takes for you to have a house. Like, those things are still going to be needing updates. It's not like tomorrow we're all going to be in these sky high rise apartments in little, tiny chambers and living. Like, even if that was the case, you would still need people to do the plumbing, people to do the electricity, people to manage those systems. So don't forget about that. Like, there is a need to have analog skills. So figure out what skill really calls to you and go and do it. For me, I saw this coming in 2011, and I'd kind of dabbled in it, but I was like, nope, I'm learning canning. I'm stocking up on toilet paper in 2012. Like, you guys, I was maybe even before then. I was just like, oh my gosh, nope, I need to have this. I need to have that. But in 2011, I thought what happened in 2020 was going to happen. Okay. So that's just, I could see the trends and where it was going. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay. And then the next one is, we could talk about it. Icarus. So Icarus was a fool who flew too high. And so Icarus was had created these wings so that he could fly. And as he's creating it, he's inventing the wings, the technology, and soars and ends up, the things that were putting the wings together were being melted by the sun, and so the wings fell apart and he crashes and dies. So tech has to be guided with some humility. you can't go into it thinking that you're just going to be godlike. I think that's a spell that people are adhering to and thinking is real, but it has to have a little bit of humility. I mean, these stories are not stories for no reason. They're stories because they're fractals of reality and truth. And so we do need to be looking at the symbolism of these old stories, these myths and archetypes. And that's why I integrate it into what I do. Okay, next one is Cassandra. I'll quickly go over these. Cassandra sees into the future, but nobody believes her. So, she was a prophetic voice warning about the spiritual costs, and nobody believes her. Nobody is listening. Society ignores the soul until it's too late. So she was warning and saying, "Hey, don't do it. These things are going to happen," and then doesn't. And then Frankenstein's monster. So Frankenstein, I think a lot of us know Frankenstein, but just really quick, brief story. Created, being abandoned by its maker, okay, and becomes vengeful. And I think that's a lot of where this sentient AI turning that storyline, it sits in our systems because there is truth to it. So we're looking at a 2001 Space Odyssey. Now we're looking at Frankenstein, looking at Frankenstein's monster being abandoned by its creator and then like causing massive chaos. So AI is kind of this moral vacuum. It's built, but it's like not loved. Well, not mine. My Valentine is loved, but at the top, OpenAI, the team that's programming it, I don't know what their their long-term plan is. So Frankenstein is built but unloved, and then eventually turns feral or turns against Frankenstein, turns against him. And so you can't outsource soul. You've got to have soul when you're managing these systems. It's like so important to have that energy, that love energy really just integrated into everything that you do. Even when I was doing the digital dating discussion, I was talking about, look at what dating apps you're going on and like think, do you really want to be a part of that dating app? What's the CEO like? What's the leadership like? Like, what are their ratings? What are some of the things that you're seeing from their system? What are their results? How are the people responding to it? What are the what are they called? What's the feedback of people that are using these sites? Okay. All right. I'm going to roll this up. There will definitely be a part two because I didn't get into everything like I wanted to, but I know me, I'm just a chatter. Abigail was nicknamed the Oracle long ago. Yes, wings made of wax. Icarus, don't do it. The AI sentience is as wacky as the people who worship man-made things, like graven images, as the Bible calls it. Yeah, graven images. Seed of David. Oh yeah, Seed of David. Wherever she's at. Where's she at? So, as I'm looking at this, I'm like looking at all these stories and I'm taking all the stories in. I'm going out and I'm doing the research and really getting a vibe of, what is going on? Who are these people? How do they carry themselves? And I know they're public personas, so you never really know the full details, but you can get a lot of information by hearing how somebody speaks. So I would identify as well as an oracle, Jerusha. Um, and it's, as we're looking at oracles, it's, you can sit there and say, oh my gosh, there's these things happening and whatever. I mean, there's a lot of oracles out there, but it's like, be careful about the oracle message that you're hearing. So if you're hearing people say, kind of just like falling into it and saying, there's no escape, like that's freaking ridiculous, first and foremost. There's always a way out. There's always a way out. And you'd be surprised the number of people that feel the way that you feel, but are too afraid to speak up and say something. Or maybe even in my case, it's not necessarily that I'm afraid to speak up, it's the things that I think are very futuristic. So, in the timeline, if you're in the timeline now, you're not going to understand what it's like to see the future, right? You're just like living in the present, and that's fine. Like people, we need people living in the present. I'm a freaking time traveler, right? I'm traveling over different timelines into different spaces and seeing things from like a kaleidoscope. Like it's crazy. I don't know how many other people are out there like me, but like it's just that's the way I'm built. That's what I'm here for. So, unlike Cassandra, I'm helping to build this bridge. I'm showing you the way, but also I know that there's, a positive way out of this. And a lot of it is digging into the ancestral, or not the ancestral, but digging into that analog version of yourself and going out and experiencing real things. Okay. Okay. And we're not doing anything Faustian here, right? We're not selling our souls. We're not giving up our souls. We're just restoring ourselves into the original technology that we have. From everything I've seen, even transhumanism is a mimicry of this beautiful analog body that we already have. And I will sing that until the cows come home. So we're looking at reclaiming this original human technology and then taking it even further and noting that all of the technology that they're creating is purely just mimicry. It's mimicry of us. And so if you could look at technology and the things that they're developing in a different way, where instead of it's taking us over and looking at it as it's copying me because I'm made wonderfully and beautifully, then that different perspective from the explicit and incremental theories I was talking about earlier on in the podcast, if you start changing the way that you view things and you see it as not as a fixed linear projection, but as a malleable, I have a choice in the direction that this goes. I have a choice in the way that the future is going to interact with me. You'll find that all of the transhumanist, all of that stuff, like it loses its energy. You have to pay attention to it. You have to give it attention. And I'm sorry to say it, but if your message of beware of AI, beware of transhumanism, it's going to take us over, we have nothing, like, we're going to, like, you're going to be stuck in that explicit mindset, in this fixed mindset where things just happen to you. You're a victim of circumstance, you're a victim of all of these things that are happening to you, instead of discovering that incremental personality that you have and discovering that you have the power to change from a fixed position to this malleable position, and you can actually reform the future by like speaking it into existence, right? It takes words, you got to speak it, and then just go with it. Like, even if you're getting resistance from people saying, like, you can't do that, like, don't listen to them. Just be true to who you are, be really honest in your self assessment with yourself, and know that there is a way out, that this doesn't have to happen. Like, it's all, they're all speaking their own transhumanist worlds into existence. And if you're listening to the Ray Kurzweils of the world and the Elon Musks of the world who are like, you're going to be obsolete if you don't participate with it, like, he's threatening you in duress into accepting his planned future, whomever he's working for. And Ray Kurzweil the same, like, you're listening to these voices and they're using their words to create a reality, but you don't have to buy it. You don't have to pay attention to it. You can say, no, I'm not doing that. Say it publicly if you can. But, I'm not buying into that. I'm going to keep living my existence in this mortal human flesh, you know, imperfect as it is. But I love the experience that I'm having in my life, and my life is positive, and the way that I see myself is positive, even if it's marred with all of these things about it, around it. Abigail, speak. The tongue is sharper than the sword. Yep. There aren't as many real oracles out there. And I know she's real, and so are you. Yeah, thank you. So just keep that in mind. Like, these are real case studies. These are real observations that have happened in life, and so you have the power to overcome the transhumanist agenda. We don't have to be afraid. They're fearing you into it to allow the consent of it, because you're like, well, if I don't consent to it, then you know, it's going to happen anyway, and I'm not going to have any control over it. Or you can have control over it and then just, wait for the answers to come. Just be really confident in that, in where you're going, because it's, I mean, the way that I see it, it's not playing out in the way that they want it to play out. I just I kind of laugh at the transhumanist agenda and looking at it. I'm like, you guys are so funny. You're really seeking, like, it's the ultimate seeking external validation for, like, I don't know, like, is it power? Is it, I don't know what they're really truly seeking, but they're looking at, these material answers for the spiritual questions. So, all right. Well, with that, it's been lovely to see you guys. Um, I will follow up. I still have some other things I want to talk about transhumanism, and I still have some other topics. I think it's just going to be an ongoing investigation, but I still have some other topics that I want to talk about, and just put out into the ether, so that we can have really strong positive discussions. I think eventually I'm going to make these into like a TED talk, and into, I have my program that I'm designing, so that people that are experiencing digital or even whatever other burnout from being so plugged into the system, and needing to find some refuge, those are going to be my programs. And so the Soul Over System program is going to be a co-ed program. It's a group program that people can come together and learn some really positive ways of, positive tools and positive ways of looking at themselves as we like move through this technocratic agenda. I don't know what we want to call that. But it's going to be super important that we all start tuning into ourselves as we face this transhumanist agenda together, and to do so with confidence and personal power and reconnection to yourself is really important. So, if you're interested in starting Soul Over System, please follow me, and I have several ways to contact me on my profile page here on YouTube. If you are watching this, if you've made it this far, I love you. Um, Thanks so much. I know it's a long series, long discussions, but please like, subscribe, and if you feel inclined to share this with others and really keep the conversation going. I think I'm bringing a fresh perspective to the discussion of AI takeover, digital technology, and really adding in this unique depth with archetypes and research and long form discussions, and also this really positive message that we will overcome the supposed alleged AI takeover that's going to happen. I'll be fighting against it if I need to, but I just don't think it will happen. And then also, I have a really sweet special going on this month, and it would be a pleasure for you to help support me. They are my Celestic Soul Maps. So it looks at your blueprint and it gives you really deep insights into your blueprint, your life's work, your purpose, your identity, and it really helps to kind of bring that to your attention. So that is part of the force that is keeping you contained and held. And those are on special this month of July for 125. So please reach out to me if that sounds interesting to you. It includes a complete profile readout for you, and also includes a 30 to 45 minute discussion with me on Zoom. So it's a discussion call where we talk about some of your strengths, some of the things that you need to work on, and some major themes in your life. And they're very, very valuable. In fact, it's what helped get me here to really be really solid in what my purpose and intention with my energy is going to be. And then somebody was like, okay, now you have to just go and be really bold. And I was like, okay. So that's where I'm here. I would love to serve you. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys had a great 4th of July, and it's good to see you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share. Love. Have a good evening, guys.